Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Behind the Emerald Veil with Mandy and Allison from Soulstar Energy Collective. We are intuitive mentors and healers that really love to chat about all things spiritual and intuition and energy to make it relatable and fun because it isn't as serious as people make it sounded. So
As people make it sound.
so we are here to just share all the things
Yeah,
and
and we're here to talk
transparently.
about a serious conversation.
Yeah, but Allie's in a bit of a silly mood. So, we
Oh.
can make this serious conversation fun.
Yeah,
Wait,
right?
before we
Actually,
get,
that's what the person said last night in my reading.
oh yeah.
It was like, because you know how like H gets me doing the shadow work and the healing, and it was, we had that conversation. She's like, but you make it fun.
It's true.
You deliver the message in like, oh, I'm just so happy. And then you like walk away and you're like, oh man, I have a lot of healing to do. And then
It's our specialty.
our specialty.
You have a lot of healing to do, but it can be fun.
But it could be fun. I could deliver it in a way that you just walk away being like, yeah.
Wait, before we get into it, how did you do with the eclipse? Because I did not process that well.
Don't mind me drinking my Slim Fast. I didn't have time to have lunch.
Okay.
Yeah, you didn't.
No.
um, yeah, we met, and I instantly was like, oh shit. Because like
You
I
were
was
riding like this wave of like love and gratitude, and you were like high vibe on the eclipse day. You were doing so great.
oh god, I was like a hippie. You were like, what the hell is happening
I
here?
loved it though.
Okay, good. Well, and it's not even my norm. Usually, like if we want to have a bitch fest, I'm down for a bitch fest. I'm a Gemini. Geminis are down for bitch fests. And but I had woken up and I was just like, I just was like, we have to, like, we're calling in this
Yeah.
energy. And I just felt this like need to be like, okay, when you wake up, I need to be in a good mood. Like I need to, let's wake up. And I think I started the day because I was like, I need to move in this intense energy
Hmm.
because I felt like it was going to be what propels me forward. And so I like woke up and I was like, I am grateful for this and that. And I was doing all the things to put me in a good mood. And thankfully it was a true good mood. It wasn't like
Yeah.
I was like, all the things and
Faking
I was
it.
like, motherfucker, and smiling. And so, but when I got to you, um, I was like in that like
Yeah.
bliss state.
It was nice to be in your energy because I was not there.
Oh God, you get out of the car and I was like, oh shit. And then I was like, it's okay. Let's touch a tree. I did do that. I swear I did.
You were like, you hugged probably 3 trees on our little walk. I just feel like I need to hug a tree.
I don't
Just
even
want to
know
be in nature.
who the fuck was that? Because
I
that's
don't,
not me. I've
I
never hugged a
enjoyed it.
tree in my life. I've never hugged a tree in my life. And something came over me. Even when we were sitting on the log, I had my eyes closed and I'm like, had my eyes closed, like looking up at the sun. And I was just like basking it. And even in my head, I was like, who the fuck are you? Like, did Yogi just step into your body? And I was like, I have no idea what's going on.
That's so funny. I on the other hand, was really feeling the intense energies like on a physical level. So it was hard for me to be in that bliss energy, but I have to say I have been in that bliss energy a lot recently leading up to the solar eclipse and even like the day after. So, but in that day, like during that day, my crown chakra was like on fire and I was so tired. I think I had 2 naps that day. I just like I felt like there was so much energy just like in my upper chakras
Oh,
in my head, and I had to wear like a hat. Like I tell people sometimes like to wear a hat if you feel like there's a lot of energy in opening your crown. It was like
yeah.
it was like pouring in, it felt like, and it was more intense than I ever felt in my life. But I was also having a hard time is staying in a high vibration because it was affecting me so physically.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah.
I
But
know.
we have to, I just want to say with that, like with that being said, part of us, like a part of me was like, oh, I don't want to be in a low vibration on this day. Like I want to be able to like be in a good mood and all those things. But I think that a lot of us get so focused on being in a high vibration when we really just can't get there. And then we feel bad about it.
Well, and we can't. Like, it's like
Mm.
if I woke up and I was like, fuck this shit, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And as much as you can fake, now I do feel like you can help transmute, and
Yeah.
like there's things we can do to kind of help shift our energy. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
like if you wake up in bad when you're shit out of luck, you're done for the day. There's things that we can
Pack it
do.
in, go
Yeah,
back to
pack it
bed.
in, go back to bed. Nothing's changing this. um and so I'm like, yeah, I do feel like you have those times, but it was like, but you can't fake it
No.
to the point of like obviously where I would the fuck it was at. You can't just like fake that shit.
Yeah, that
It's
was like
you're
a
either
new level. I loved it.
I even had a tree talk to me and it
Yeah.
touched me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Swore I would never be this person. Like, I'm
Here you
like, yeah, I just can't even, I don't even know. Yeah, so I don't even fucking know. But you know what? It was like, but even like I think even for yourself, like I think the being in nature, so
are.
like you weren't in that high vibrational, but being in nature, being around me,
Yeah.
your oracle though. And like, no, but being in nature, sitting at the beach, kind of like taking that time to just be in
Yeah. Be
peace and
still.
quiet and
Yeah.
still helps, right?
Absolutely. And it
In all of that.
absolutely, yeah, it helped for sure. And then I came home and I did some work and then I had a nap and then I wasn't like grumpy. I was just really low. Like I used
Yeah.
to have those days all the time.
Yeah.
Where and I called them down days where I just had low energy.
Downer days.
No, down, just
Oh,
down
Debbie
days.
Downer days.
Yeah, no, just
Mandy Downer days.
just a down day. I was just down.
Damn it.
Low energy. I wasn't in like a terrible mood. I was just not like I was not my upbeat, enthusiastic, excitable type of
Yeah.
person. And
Yeah.
that was okay. That's okay. That's the way I processed that energy. It was intense. It was intense. I feel like a lot of people process it one way or the other.
Oh, absolutely. And it depends if it's before or after.
Mhm.
All of that. Like yesterday, I had a horrible headache.
Mhm.
And I saw like the Schumann resonance was like popping off. So that's the
Mhm.
energy from Earth.
Yeah.
And we even had a blackout period, which typically means it's too high for it to be registered.
Mhm.
And so I was like, oh, that makes sense, because my
Yeah.
headaches always seem to come because it came out of nowhere and I was like, what the hell?
Mhm.
And you know what, it was funny, I was thinking about that yesterday because I had to do, my human job, and and I was like, my head was hurting. I was feeling literally drained from, having to do my day job. And I met with you and I was just kind of like, I was just like, I'm tired. Like
Mhm.
I got nothing in me. But I realized afterwards, like just being in your energy, like amped me up.
Yeah.
And then I had to drive home by myself and I went right back down. Thanks a lot, Mandy. Should drive me home.
You should have planned that better.
I should have planned that better.
We were gonna go together, but then you took too long because you're too
Oh,
chatty.
I am too chatty. Can't handle it. Get so
Okay.
mad at myself. Okay.
I feel like we should get into today's topic.
Yeah, you need to keep me in track. I already told you I'm like,
He's all over today.
I'm
So
all
we're
over.
actually going to talk about
Something serious.
dun dun dun.
Dun,
We're going to
dun.
talk about the intimacy wound
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
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 Well, well, let's talk about okay, we're going to talk about what it is,
Yeah.
how it can show up, and that like we both hold an intimacy wound.
Yep.
And ways that you can start to process it or heal it in a
Mm-hmm.
way. But I want to say I think part of the intimacy wound, if you've never experienced trauma in this life, like sexual trauma, for example, an intimacy wound can certainly show up because of a parallel life or past. We're going to call it parallel life because past lives are everything's parallel. So if we
Yeah,
say
past lives
parallel life,
are parallel.
yeah,
Yeah.
if we say parallel life, we mean it means past life. It's the same thing.
Because
Um,
all things are happening at the same
at the
time.
same
Like
time.
it's a mind fuck. We all know that.
Yeah, which we
So,
talk about in our Intuition 101 if you want a little bit more clarity on that. Or
mhm.
I'm sure we've talked about it on the podcast. So,
We have.
so
Yeah.
listen to all the episodes to find
We
that
said it.
little nugget of information.
Yeah. At
Anyway,
some point.
okay, so talk to us about, tell us what is an intimacy wound in your in your words.
So, what is an intimacy wound in my words? So I guess it's something within you, when your perception of intimacy, I would say your perception and perspective on intimacy, and even the story you tell yourself around intimacy, can show up like it can be an intimacy wound, like if it's not a healthy perception of it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's many different types of wounds and intimacy wounds, because you can have some people that they don't feel comfortable being intimate at all, or have no desire, or they, I don't know, like there can be this like turn off from
Mm-hmm.
it. And then there can be like the complete opposite,
Opposite.
where it's like a power. If you feel the power of being, this, sultrous, blah, 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 all these things where there's like, you can go from one angle to
Mm-hmm.
another, extreme to another. And it's neither one is necessarily the best. And it's like finding that kind of beautiful balance of, you know, being able to own and claim your intimacy, like, and I think for women
Your
we do struggle
sexuality.
your sexuality, and
Um,
for women we do struggle with that, and for many reasons, right? Even just in society, how we've been suppressed with that. So I think, like, to not have a wound, it's like being able to like literally have this beautiful thing and not be ashamed of it,
yeah.
and not feel like, if I do this, then it's like, no, you shouldn't do that. It's like
Mm-hmm.
we're given these beautiful bodies and this ability to have pleasure. There should be nothing dirty, I guess, in my head around it. Like that's how I kind of look at it. We shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
feel that if you're being pleasured that it's dirty or anything like that. But there's this kind of like in like, I don't know, like it's kind of like laced into our society or into our programming that there
Yeah.
is this shamefulness. And then at the same time, I think with the intimacy wound, we've seen it over the centuries, um, how women have been suppressed but also exploited.
Yeah.
Um, and that has shifted over the centuries, but it is something very much shown in our history.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like that kind of like echo continues on like within our being.
Yeah. I think I want to share, um, for people that don't know, way ancient times. So ancient civilizations, even though like before like Lemuria and Atlantis, women were goddesses and they were revered as goddesses, and they were the ones, the oracles, they were the priestesses, they were the ones that held the cards in the sense, and they were the ones that ran, the society in a way. Like they held, women hold so much wisdom and but also empathy and the ability to be a nurturer and just like this beautiful feminine energy within them. And so they would lead from that femininity, from the balance, you know what I mean? So there was ancient civilizations where women were revered as goddesses, and people would come to them and they would be the ones making the decisions on how the society would move forward, or how the village, or how the whatever would move forward. So I haven't done a lot of research and reading on this. I've just come across this little bit of information here and there. So something that I know will come into my awareness a little bit further down the road, and then maybe we'll do another like full episode on it. But as that evolved over time, even in like ancient Rome, for example, the Roman Empire had hierarchy, and it was all men in charge. So at some point, usually probably around the fall of Atlantis and Lemuria, is when there was ego came into play, right? And power and hierarchy. And that's where everything kind of transformed for our reality. And, in ancient Rome, they had this hierarchy where it was these Roman empires and these Roman or emperors or whatever they were called. And there was never any women involved in any decision making. Women were looked at, and the narrative was created that women didn't have and weren't allowed to have a say. They didn't have any rights. They were basically there to please the man, right?
Mhm.
Roman emperors and kings from the beginning of time have had mistresses and wives and multiple wives and multiple mistresses, and just have taken women whenever they wanted, like they were a piece of meat. And, knights and guards, and through history, you can see this happening where women were just viewed as a tool
Mhm.
for men to take advantage of and do what they will with. And
Mhm.
then that was the narrative that women had, growing up. And, it's just the way that it was. And even like when you watch old movies and stuff, I was watching a movie on the weekend, and it was the late 1800s and the brothels. If
Yeah.
women wanted to be independent and have their own income and their own wealth, they were working in the brothels, because if you weren't, then you were a housewife at home, likely in an abusive relationship, or because the man, there was alcohol, and you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
it was rare, I would say, to have a beautiful, loving relationship in any period of time,
Mhm.
especially back then. So if you wanted to have some sort of independence and earn an income, women would work in brothels. And I remember reading somewhere that those women were actually revered from the other women, the housewives. I would be like, oh, I wish I could work in the brothel, because then I
My
would have
God.
my independence and my freedom, and I could do what I wanted. But
Yeah.
again, that's, coming back to that sexual wound, that intimacy wound, where so many of us in our past lives, for any of the lifetimes that we lived as a woman, probably the majority of them have been in a sense where we have been taken advantage of, manipulated sexually, traumatized, sexually abused, all that sort of stuff.
All of it. Well, and you can also see just in that where the sense of power,
Mm-hmm.
so having, this sexual power, um, could have rooted from, because if you were then working in a brothel
Yeah.
and you had independence, you felt this power, this sense of power. And so when we kind of say, like, in today's, when and I don't look at it as like, oh, it's so bad if you feel like powerful when you're sexual. I don't think that's
No, not
bad
at
at
all.
all, but it can go too far where it's like you feel like you need to be that way, or to hold it as a power, or to hold it over, you know what I mean? Like, it can turn to the wounded very easily,
Mhm.
in that sense, like, I only have power if I am sexual.
Yeah.
And I think, I know for myself, for sure, growing up, had that mindset. I remember being in, high school, and going to the parties, and if I over sexualized myself, then I felt like that was the only way to get attention. And so
Mhm.
in that sense, it's kind of like, or that's the only way that somebody's going to like me, or if all of these type of things. And I'd had that mindset, and, you know no idea where that came from. It's not like it was instilled into me from my parents or anything like that. But right there, you see where it's kind of like, it was like my only value
Yeah.
was that if I like do this, or if I do that, or if they're like, ooh, she's easy or whatever, then they're gonna like me. And so that kind of like just made me think of the brothel, in the sense, like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, sex was connected to power and independence and freedom, because that was what it was. To have
It was
that,
the
you
only
had to have
way.
sex. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the only way women could have their independence and their freedom. And it wasn't even freedom really, or independence. But and even in today's society and when we were growing up and stuff, the over sexualized of everything, and even like it's even worse than it was back then. And I actually was the opposite in my teen years, where I was very guarded with my sexuality, and I was just not, I just wouldn't let anybody, you know what I mean? Like I was not intimate until way later compared to a lot of my friends. And I remember my thought process was like, well, if I'm dating somebody, at least I know it's not because they can have sex with me. You know
Mm.
what I mean?
Yeah,
So I was
I
like,
like that.
yeah, I was like, okay, so I'm dating somebody. At least I know it's because they like me, and it's not because I'm easy or whatever it was. Whereas a lot of my friends in high school were all like, I knew everything about sex before I had it. Like I knew what it sounded like, what it smelled like, what it tasted like, what it like
No
everything,
way.
because all my friends were having sex way before me, and we would go for coffee and they would tell all their stories, and I was just like, oh my God, but I knew it all before.
I was one of those.
Yeah.
I was telling all the stories.
Yeah.
No, we didn't know each other then, but I was
No,
one of those.
you
Yeah.
would have been, you would have been.
Well, I'm just so open
Anyways,
anyways.
and I'm
And
not. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I think like for myself, I've always been there's this part of me that I don't know. So even though I had that wounded side that felt
Mhm.
like sex or like being overly intimate or whatever was the only way somebody would like, so that definitely was the wounded side. I also have this side of empowerment where I'm like, my needs are just as important, and like taking care of business for yourself. There's no shame in that. And I just remember from a young age being like, what?
Yeah.
No. When people would be like, oh no, I would never. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, why wouldn't you? Like, because it was just like this, like I couldn't understand. Like, why aren't you? What's wrong with that? And
Are you
we
talking
were
about
given these
is are
masturbating.
you, yeah, okay. I love that you're talking about this, because I remember I was watching and reading, so I've read a couple articles on this, how housewives in the 50s
Mhm.
didn't touch themselves ever.
Which
And
just baffles
well,
my
yeah,
mind.
me too, because then their husband had all the power. Do you know what I mean? Like in this relationship sexually. And so they would have, and even back in the olden days, I remember watching this movie. I can't remember the time frame it was, but basically there was a doctor that would get them off, because it was like a mental like health, a mental health thing, and
Oh my
they were
God.
coming in for some sort of mental health issue, and then the doctor was like basically getting them off.
Oh
And
my.
then
Because then, like, if they didn't touch themselves, the men were most likely not even caring that that
well, they
wasn't.
were off having sex with other people probably.
Well, and I don't think the pleasure of the female was ever at that point was ever a priority. It was kind of like, no, like I'm the man, I need to be satisfied, but it wasn't like a let me make sure I'm taking care of you, honey, type
Yeah.
of thing. So then if you're not touching yourself, and then the men don't view it as like, no, you don't need to be doing this, then of course you go to the doctor. Man, I'd be getting a pap smear all the time.
Right?
And I can also say I
It's
call
called,
bullshit. I call bullshit they didn't touch themselves. They're damn girls, ladies were touching themselves
well,
for sure. But it would have
yeah.
been a hidden, it would
Well,
have been a
okay.
hidden
Wait,
thing.
you tie in religion into
Mm.
this,
Oh, and then you have guilt.
and then you have guilt. So a lot of women probably weren't touching themselves because
Or they were and they felt so guilty
so
and they would have
guilty.
to repent. And you know what? That's even happening in today's world.
Yeah. The
Like
movie,
I
wait,
know somebody that that same type of thing has happened in so our age has happened in their lifetime, that if any of that like literally had to go and confess to the minister or whatever that they did this and repent for it. And I'm like, so it's still happening.
wow. Wait, the movie is called Hysteria.
Hysteria. Okay.
Hysteria. It's
Oh.
about Dr. Mortimer Granville's invention of the electric vibrator to give women orgasms, and how it stepped. So he was using this tool to help women basically have an orgasm, because they weren't being satisfied at home, but the women didn't even know that's what was happening. But then obviously this doctor was getting super popular. So,
Because they're like, I
oh,
don't know
and
what's
also I
happening.
think the
It's
doctor had
great.
an issue with his hand in the end because he was doing it by hand. So he created the vibrator to help his hand.
Is this like a real store? Is this a real
Wait,
movie?
where's your audio?
What are you talking about?
Hold on. I
Can
can't
you
hear
hear me?
you.
You can't hear me? What the?
What?
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Siri's talking to us.
Can you hear
Okay,
me?
there we go. I can hear you now.
What?
Wait, did you hear Siri talk to me?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can hear you the whole time.
Oh,
I'm like,
Siri
nothing
had a
changed.
Siri had something to say. I mean, spirit, because you know when that happens, it's
Oh
actually spirit.
my gosh.
Validate, validate.
I
Yeah.
was asking, is this a real movie? Is it a documentary or was this a fake one?
It's a
A
real
fake
movie.
a fake one. No,
It's not a
like,
documentary. It's like a
is it based on real events?
yeah.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, and it's funny because we can say that you know, oh, like, 50 years ago, 70 years, like this people didn't know. But what's amazing is like what's crazy is like we still don't. There's a lot
Oh.
of women that will not touch themselves, or there's a lot of women that maybe haven't even had an orgasm.
Mhm.
And it just shows like in this day and age with how liberal we
Mhm.
all are, how that can still be very much ingrained
Yeah,
in us.
it was a deep
Deep, deep,
program
deep, deep.
within religion. It's a deep program within society. And also we're dealing with all of this past energy, this energy that we are holding from past lives, right?
Yeah, and like releasing it, our
Yeah.
ancestors, and within us. And I even think like, I was saying to you earlier, like for myself, I'm like I had this deep, like even though I can be very modest, liberal, I don't know. Even though I have like this is my Gemini. I fucking have how many different sides of me. I'm like I have the wounded side that's like nobody would like me unless it's sexual. Then I have the like empowerment side where I'm like yeah, you can take care of yourself. Why wouldn't you? You've been given this body for a reason. And then I have this like other side where I have no idea where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing in my past that would make me think this, but there was just this ingrained in me where it was like, well, like at the end of the day, if you're having a makeout sesh, he needs to go. Like I don't need to. Like if it's fine. I don't need to. No, it's fine. I'm good. Leave me.
Yeah.
Get out of here. I'm good. I'm fine. And that's I've realized, and this is probably just in the last couple of years where I've realized this pattern.
Mm.
And I'm like, holy crap, I have done this my whole life where it's like I don't put my own needs, like I literally even like shy away from it. Kind of like, let's not even go there. I will just take care of myself or whatever it is. Let's not even go there. But there's no in my head, I had it. You can't just leave. You can't just stop until they're, taken care of. And it kind of was like this realization where I was like, where the fuck did that come from? And
Yeah.
it's like there's something in that in sitting with understanding your sexual or your
Your
intimacy story.
story. Yeah.
Yeah. And really kind of reflecting on it to be like for me it was just kind of like I sit there and even now like this will probably be something I'll have to work on going into new relationships. And it's kind of like sitting there being like I have no idea where this rooted from,
Mm-hmm.
but I also am like but that's not right. Like I should
Yeah.
be honoring myself. I should be just as important. So now it's kind of like okay, like this is something I'm going to pay attention to. I'm going to watch. And so with everybody else it's like what's your sexual story? What's your intimacy story? What do you
Mm-hmm.
tell yourself? And is it healthy? Is it what you want? If it's not what you want, then like what do you want? I had to sit there for a while too to realize like I'm like no, actually I want this and this. And then it's like how do I get that? What do I do? Like it was
Yeah.
so foreign to me. But
Yeah.
like that's really embedded, deeply embedded. So I feel like a lot of us have that.
I agree. And I think that a lot of us don't feel safe to talk to our partners about our needs or our wants or even where our hesitations come from. Do you know what I mean? So for me, like I know I can have those conversations with Nick,
Yeah.
and he's helped me move through a lot of sexual trauma that I didn't
Mhm.
even experience in this lifetime. I just held this weird energy about having sex or feeling
Yeah.
obligated to have sex, and like it was like my own issue that I didn't know where it came from, because I didn't experience any sexual trauma or abuse in this lifetime, or that I could remember,
Yeah.
so I don't know why I held on to this weird feeling around having sex, or not feeling like I was a tool, or uh feeling obligated to have sex. Like all of these things are
Yeah.
things that Nick and I have had to work through in our relationship early
Yeah.
on, but
Yeah.
it also ties to the fact, like that's why I didn't have a lot of partners before I got married, and
Mm-hmm.
why I wasn't intimate with anybody like early on, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because it is that kind of, and I feel like there is a line, I know for myself, I've definitely have had those moments, and I feel it kind of even feels like it's gotten stronger the older I've gotten, and
Mm.
maybe the more intuitive I've gotten, where I
Mhm.
do have these like this kind of like dialogue in the back of my head where I'm like, okay, like I don't know, it's just this feeling of like I don't need it.
Mhm.
Is it enjoyable? Of course it is. I
Mhm.
don't need it. It
Yeah.
doesn't run me.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's this sense of like sometimes it feels like the other side, it can like very much be very much part of their everyday like thinking and all that stuff. And it's hard to understand. And
Mhm.
I'm like, and so I'm like, I'm always the type that I'll put myself in somebody else's shoes. I like to be like, okay, if that was me, like what would this be like? And it feels like there's this bit of this history or this dialogue like that and back in the day when it was like men need to be taken care of, like when you were saying, I don't even know, 100 years ago, like 500 years ago, like women were a tool, and it was like you
Mhm.
just needed to make sure they were satisfied, and it feels like the remnants of that kind of like have come through history and through time and still kind of like linger. I see it
It's
as
still
energy just lingering around, where it's like, oh, if your husband's like, oh man, I'm so horny, I want to do it, and you're like, ew. And I know women listening right now can relate to the how many times have we been like, ew, God, like get yourself together,
I agree. Yeah.
and so I'm like, and so that's where part of me is like, wow, I truly feel like that is a bit of a remnants from the centuries and centuries of those times they were animals. There are
Well,
those times they were literally, that's all they could think about. There was
mhm.
those times, and I feel like that has kind of like left an imprint into our lives now. And when we say parallel lives, because it's happening right now somewhere else. And we obviously live in a society now. Yes, we still see that. Do we see it as like
I think we see it
I don't
in
want
just
to,
different
yeah,
ways. But I
yeah,
want to point out there that, as much as women are dealing with wounds and energy coming through from parallel lives or from past lives, a lot of men are too. You know what
mm-hmm,
I mean? A lot of the men, I would imagine, who have this insatiable need for sex, or
yeah,
for intimacy, or whatever it is, that they don't know why they feel that way.
no,
Likely it's coming from an ancestral line, or from past lives, energy from past lives that they're also trying to heal, or to work on, or to work through as well.
mm-hmm,
So, on both sides, we're both genders are dealing with this trauma, this energy from our history that we brought into this lifetime. And we all know, and if you don't, I'm here to tell you, a lot a lot of us in the lifetime that we're living today, like this period of time, a lot of us are healing and releasing a lot of the energy that we've brought through from different lifetimes, or from parallel lifetimes, so that we can shift things for our lineage, for our ancestors, and for our future lifetimes.
absolutely. And I even think like when you were kind of talking, because I was like, there's also like the opposite as well, because I've definitely come across women who are extremely horny and sexual,
Oh
and that's
yeah.
all they think about, and their partner is not.
Yeah.
And I think like, and that can be, I think, difficult because it's not the majority. So
Yeah.
the majority, I would say, is the opposite, where the man, has a higher sex drive than the
Mhm.
female, and the female's like, I wish I did, and it'd be so much easier. And but you do have, which is not as common, but that can be very, I would say, hard, because you're going against like societal norms, and
Yeah.
you're like, what's wrong? What, you just want to do it all the time, and your husband doesn't, and then it goes like, but aren't men always wanting to do it? And if he doesn't want to do it, that means there's
What's
something
wrong with
wrong with
me?
me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now you're like totally flipping this narrative that
Mhm.
is out there, this norm, and now you still feel,
It's like an added layer of
yeah,
things to deal with. But I
all
think
of it.
I feel like if anybody's dealing with that type of like any type of wound, or whether it's like extra or not at all or whatever, like I feel like that's going to be written in your stars, like in your astrological chart, because I just feel like if that's a main theme in your life that you're constantly trying to work through, that's probably something that you're
Yeah.
contracted to work through. I don't, my nose is so itchy.
Oh, I get that sometimes. It's so
Yeah.
annoying.
Ugh. Sorry.
Spirits around
It's
you.
distracting me.
Oh yeah, it's the worst. I can feel it. Um, and I think, we've come across clients that have come for healings, and or wanting to understand past lives, so going to the Akashic records to, because they feel this deeply, like they're like, I don't know what it is, nothing's happened in this lifetime, but I have like an aversion to it, I have this, and it's like, it was really hard because
Mhm.
it can put a big strain on relationships. And when you're having to force something,
Mhm.
because you're married, and that's what married people do, and to be intimate, and when you're having to be like, okay, yeah, I got to do this, because like, I think I remember a therapist saying to me one time, if there's no intimacy,
Mhm.
then you're just friends.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh God, yeah, that's true, I
Or
guess so.
roommates. You're
Yeah,
just
you're
roommates
roomies,
that share a bed.
yeah. And so I'm like, so this pressure does come in.
Mhm.
And so if we're going with the majority, and I will say for women,
Mhm.
that we have to do it. And when you don't want to do it,
Mhm.
that is really hard. And that's when it can kind of get into feeling like it mimics a force,
Yeah.
because
Well,
you
there's
are
that
forcing
energy.
yourself.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
obligation.
Obligation you're doing. I know I've done that. Absolutely. I know that there's times like I would be like, oh, I don't want to do it. And then you start and you're like, oh, that's fun.
Feels so good.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Why don't we do
We
this more often?
why don't we? And you're like, that was amazing. But then there's also been times that I've been like, yeah, I know I don't want to do it, but usually I'm into it afterwards. And there's been times that I couldn't get into it, and I
Mhm.
have, bit my teeth down, or have just like gotten through it. And and it sounds awful, because it's just kind of like, what, you
Well,
should just
we
be
shouldn't
saying,
we shouldn't have to. And I just can hear like all the grandmas in the room saying, "That's marriage, honey. That's
ah,
what you know what I mean? That's part of marriage." I can all the grandmas are
damn,
here right
oh
now. And
my
I'm here to
God.
tell you, grandmas,
It is
we're
not.
changing the narrative.
And it shouldn't be. And I
Yeah.
think for myself, because it was so ingrained in me that you can't start something and just leave it.
Hmm.
I think it's blue balls. I have no idea. I don't even know where this came from, but something in my little brain at some point in my life was like, oh, you can't do that. That's awful. That's so rude.
What, give them blue balls?
Yeah, blue balls. You can't just be like, hey, and then be like, see ya. And then in reality, it's like, dude, they just finish themselves off. They just take care of it. Like, it's not your responsibility. I don't know, but these are the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
But in reality, like in those moments, it's like, yeah, sure, let's do it. I'm not really into it, but let's see if I can get there. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with saying, like, I think back to my past self
Hmm.
and think, Allison, there's nothing wrong to say, you know what? I just can't get into it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to end. You take care of yourself. Because that's another thing. Like, I never have an issue with self-satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
You do it, I do it, whatever. I don't care. You're horny. You want to have sex. I don't. Hey, go upstairs. Let me know when you're done. That was like how, all the time. But then I've also come across many friends that they're like, absolutely not. No, he does not do that. Mm-mm.
Really?
Yep. And or they'd be pissed if they were. And I was like, really? I'm like, why do we have all these walls
Yeah.
around this? Why? We
Mm-hmm.
literally have been giving these bodies that have pleasure, our souls, our
Yeah.
energy, our light is like, woo, we get to come here and experience the physical, whether that be physical food, whether that be physical feeling water, the waves rushing around your body, whether that's feeling the wind in your hair, whether that's having a bloody orgasm. We are
Mm-hmm.
in these physical bodies for a reason. There's no shame,
Mm-hmm.
or there shouldn't be any like walls put up to be like, don't you dare take care of yourself. What?
Right? I know. I agree with you. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's all because of the programming and the narrative and our history, and it's just such a messy mess, like a
It's so
big
messy.
ball. It's like a big ball of yarn that is all knotted up, and we have to try to untangle that, but we
Yeah.
can only do that for ourselves. We can't worry about everybody else. So
No.
untangle your own ball of yarn, and you figure
Yeah.
that out, and take away all of the programs and all of the things that you thought you were supposed to be, the way that you're supposed to be, what you were supposed to do. But this is also why we are seeing so many people now talking about, especially for women. I haven't seen it so much for men, but talking about connecting to your yoni. Remember, we were talking about your yoni, but this is a huge,
Yanni.
yeah, no,
Yanni
this is
steam.
yoni eggs. Like, this is a whole thing, is
Yanni
reconnecting.
eggs. What's
Putting,
that?
there's like you can grab a yoni egg and and put it in your vagina,
Oh,
and it's supposed to be like Kegels, I
is it
think.
an air freshener?
Didn't you have one? An air freshener? That was a derogatory joke.
What? How's it derogatory?
I'm just kidding.
Oh, I was like, I just put it up there. I'm like, keeping it fresh all day.
It could be essential oils, lavender.
Edible. Just keep it fresh, man. No, oh yeah, no, there is that. Those are um
You had Kegel balls or something.
they're vagina beads.
Okay, so these are
Balls.
called yoni eggs, and it's the same idea, but it's like a
Keep
crystal,
it in them.
like an
It's a
element.
crystal?
Yeah, so we got the vibration of the crystal.
So fun story, so funny. So back in the day, in my young days, we used to have at work, not at work.
Retract.
Work colleagues, not at the actual work. We used to have sex toy parties, and we would have somebody from the sex toy store
Yeah.
come to whoever's house was hosting it, and literally just talk about sex toys, lube, all the things. Super freaking fun.
These are the first adopters of reconnecting to your yoni.
Yeah, right there, baby. And I don't know how many times we did. We did it so many times. And at one of them, because of course they're talking about all these cool new toys and things, and then these vagina ball things come out. And she's like, and they sell it so well.
I know.
And all of us are like, yeah, we want that. And so we're like, oh yeah, let's wear it to work. And so we like show up and you're like, got him in? I'm like, yeah, I got him in. You got him in? You're like, yeah, I got him in. And then we're like, woo. And then I went to the washroom, and apparently, I don't know why, but I don't know, when I'm going pee, I push. I have no idea. I just want it done. I don't sit there and just let it just take its time. I'm like, let's go. And
you killed me.
And they literally freaking
shot out of your vagina.
Yeah, into the freaking toilet bowl. And I was like,
that's full of your pee now.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, what the hell am I gonna do? I'm gonna have to grab it out of the toilet. Hopefully nobody's standing out there, because I'm not putting it back in. And I was like, and I gotta put in some paper and sneak it to my office and put it in my purse. I'm like, what the hell? And I was like, mine don't work.
Mine don't work.
gave birth to mine in the toilet right there. And I was like, I don't even know what happened. And so mine was like bloody broken.
Well, at least
I
they
was
didn't.
broken.
At least they didn't. They were just too small, maybe.
You saying I have a big yawny?
Maybe. I don't know how big your
I
yawning is.
can't. I didn't birth children naturally. It's all intact. It's all intact. I'm like, oh, it's all like
It's all tight.
Yeah, it's just because I'm too forceful when I pee.
So funny. I love that story.
I know, but I'm like, I do love that, like, because and we do see these pockets of like, in women, you know, I'll say, and I think that's gone back centuries. Women are very open and talk very kind of freely when we are in a safe place.
Yeah, together.
Yeah, together. And like, men should worry because we tell details.
Men
like,
should worry.
They should worry. Yeah. So it's not like the bros and be like, hey man, you hit it. Yeah, you hit it. Oh no. We're like, did you do it last night? Oh my God, what did it feel like? What, how big is he? Like, what's happening there? Oh my God, did you do this? Like, we have every bloody detail down. And so I'm like, and I love that because that is like us just owning and it being this beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
And I think, you know, seeing this more and more and more, like you know, my sister has a very hard time talking about it with her daughters. And so this is where you can kind of see different layers and levels of it.
Yeah.
Where I am not embarrassed and I am so open about it. I swear I should have been a sex therapist.
I thought you were gonna be.
I wanted to. Yes, I did. My mom talked me out of it. It would have been amazing.
We would be having a completely different conversation today if you were actually a sex therapist. This would be pretty.
I could be Sue Johansson.
Yes.
Do you remember Sue Johansson?
She had the dildos on late night TV.
Yeah, if you go in and YouTube, like,
what's her name?
Sue Johansson. Sue Johansson? It is Sue Johansson, right?
I don't know.
I know, Holly. She's yelling, yes, Sue Johansson.
She has short hair.
Yeah, she was an old lady, short curly hair, like the typical,
very open about sex,
very open.
Taught it on TV.
She did, and on the radio, radio. So I grew up like listening. She came to my high school.
Oh, was she Canadian?
Yeah. So I think she was Canadian. I'm like, she came to my high school, and I remember we let's see, she
talked about sex and condoms.
Oh yeah. So there was like a box that we could all put our like questions in, because of course who in high school would be like, can I just talk about blowjobs, please? And everybody'd be like, you know, I would be like that now too. I'm like, it's so funny. We're so immature.
Okay, it is Sue Johansson, and she is Canadian. She was born in 1930.
Okay, so everybody, if you haven't come across her, definitely go to YouTube and watch her. So I've watched a video, it was recently, because I think we were talking about it with somebody, and I'm like listening to her, and I'm like, oh my God,
for the time, because it was
way like more graphic than I even like remember.
80s, 90s, right? 80s, 90s.
Oh yeah.
90s.
It must have been 90s. Yeah, I wouldn't have been 5 listening to her, but
are you sure maybe that's where your programming came from?
Holy shit. I'm like, oh, she's just like very like vocal with it, and it was freaking awesome, but it's hilarious to watch back now. No, my parents did the whole like video movie thing.
My parents didn't talk to me about sex at all, and I learned from my friends over coffee, and also from Degrassi Junior High.
Well, see, this is the problem. And so I'm like, my parents, you know, obviously instead of having a talk with me, they got this educational movie that did the talk. And because I'm a Gemini in the way I am, they didn't expect for me to come upstairs and be like, have a list of questions. You just gave me this movie. I am fascinated. Tell me more.
Tell me more.
But that's the Gemini too.
Enter Sue Johnson.
Oh my God. Like my mom was like, gulp, holy crap. And so I've always just been very like open or whatever about it, but it was never something that was shameful. I wouldn't say we sat there and like casually had conversations about sex. No. But I never felt like I couldn't say something, or yeah, I never felt that. And then I remember having a friend who, it was not talked about. She had sisters, she had everything, nobody talked about it. And she lost her virginity, and it came to me after and was like, oh my God, I just used this condom and I just read it and it says novelty condom. It's not there to, and in my head I was like, oh my God, like, you know, one of those edible or
Yeah.
glow in the dark or whatever. And I'm like, and I just remember thinking at that young age, I was like, this is why we talk about it. Like,
Yeah.
why is this shameful?
Mhm.
Why was it shameful for her mom or her sisters to talk about it? Because like then you're kind of like letting them out and having no idea, and there are real consequences when we
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand in my head why there was shame to talk about it. And so it was something like, I think at that moment I was like, when I have children, I am going to normalize the fuck out of this
Mhm.
because I never want them to feel shame.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, I get two boys.
Ah, still
And
good.
it's
Still
still,
good because
and
now
I do,
you can,
yeah,
from the man's perspective,
yeah,
owning the responsibility of being able to hold space for a woman. Because I
absolutely.
remember the first time I was intimate and I didn't want to do it again, but then I felt obligated because I'd done it, and now my boyfriend wanted to do it more.
All the
Do you know
time, of
what I mean?
course, right? Why wouldn't
I
you?
never thought about that when I decided to do it. I was like, damn,
We have to do this again.
I didn't want to. I didn't feel good, right?
Yeah, well,
It
and
took a while for
of
it to
course, and
feel
it
good.
wouldn't at the beginning,
No.
but when nobody talks to you
Yeah.
about it, and it's like, and they can say, "Oh, well, the schools talk about it." Give me a break.
No.
You sit in the school, you're half listening, you're half humiliated because you're like, "Oh my God, the boys are snickering over there," and then you're like, "I'm gonna snicker too." This stuff is stupid. Like I think we all, and then you're like secretly like fascinated. All of them are fascinated, and so like I definitely am like fully open, age appropriate
Yeah.
with my boys, have always been. I usually do it in the car because they can't
Well, that's
run
a
away
perfect
from
spot
me.
to talk to children. They actually open up the most when they're in the back seat because they can't see your face or your reaction.
Totally. And
Yeah.
I'm like, and I've just made it that it's like not a big deal in the
Yeah.
sense of like, not that it's like, oh, okay, you just do it with anybody, blah, 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 blah. But not that it's a shameful thing or like an embarrassing thing to talk about. And like,
Yeah.
when Carter, because Tanner hasn't had this yet, I can't wait till he has sex education because he's a funny one. He's kind of like me. He'll be like, he's actually no, he's a bit prudish.
Mhm.
Like he's a bit like modest, like don't look at me when I'm type of thing.
Yeah.
um but he's a curious mind like me, so I'm curious to see how he kind of takes to it. But I remember Carter kind of, he's more like, oh, don't talk about it, mom, it's
Yeah.
embarrassing. But I
Yeah.
remember him slowly starting to open up and ask a few questions, and I would be so casual with it. I wouldn't
Mhm.
be like, oh, are we ready to talk about this? I was totally like cool and collected, like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, and there were some questions that I went,
Mhm.
where I was like, oh my God, this is weird. And then I was like, nope, keep it cool, man. Keep it cool. We're just gonna talk about it. And now my sister wants to send her daughters over to me to talk about it
You
because
should. That's a
doesn't want to talk
perfect.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Maybe
I'm
she
like,
should come and listen to your talk too. Maybe
right?
she could learn a couple things.
Oh my God, I know. I'm like, I could talk about it all day long.
Yeah.
But we touched on everything that we wanted to touch on.
Well, I think
We
we
were
touched.
talking about the trauma or yeah.
I think the intention of this podcast was really to just acknowledge that there is an intimacy wound that a lot of women hold for no reason, like for no, like, I guess, tangible reason that they can think of,
Mhm.
right? And this will show up for a lot of us, in our marriage or in a partnership, in a relationship. Obviously, when it comes to the intimacy, but also to acknowledge that men also hold intimacy wounds and that
Mhm.
we're all trying to heal. Maybe not everybody, but anybody who's, here doing this work and interested in, energy and spirituality and ascension and all that sort of stuff. We're all doing our own work to heal this trauma from centuries of sexual misrepresentation, misinterpretation, manipulation, trauma, abuse, like all of that stuff that, and it was in both sides. Like men dealt with the trauma in different ways and women dealt with trauma in different ways. I think it's more ingrained for women, maybe ribboned a little bit deeper in our lineages and our ancestors and stuff like that, but we're all kind of trying to heal it and trying to understand it. And then also like flipping it to look forward. So I feel like this is a pivotal period where, we're kind of sitting with it and we're trying to understand it, but then we've got to look forward and try to figure out how we want to move forward through it and to release it and heal it. And that's again why there's so many people out there that are, offering these circles or courses or meditations around reconnecting to your feminine, reconnecting to your womb, reconnecting to your yoni, and they all do this in different ways, the different ways that they feel called to do it. We come across somebody on Instagram who I like love to watch, but would never do this myself. And she casts vagina. Right?
I sent
It's
you
like
the
a
video. I
trophy.
sent you the video and I was like, hey Mandy, want to go to our next retreat?
I could never do, I can't never say never, but at this stage in my healing journey, that's too extreme for me at the moment. But who knows down the road? Because, last year when we were talking about yoni steams, we were both like, yoni steam. But now I'm like, maybe that's a beautiful way to reconnect to your feminine energy and your yoni and your sexuality and reclaiming that in a healthy, balanced way. And I think that a lot of females and women are looking at that or will be kind of opening up to that possibility or to that next avenue or next layer of healing in the future moving forward. Because, we are powerful, beautiful women. We have just been suppressed for centuries. When we reconnect to our divine feminine, to our womb, to our yonis, to like all that sort of stuff, there's so much power within that. And it's a beautiful feminine, like nurturing power. It's not an overbearing masculine power that we're used to seeing. Yeah, dominance. There's no dominance involved in that for most people. But anyways, that's just what I wanted to say about that.
Yeah. And I'll say I was curious to see like, what would my yoni cast like? Because this video is showing the cast, like the after that. And so literally you're like seeing their vaginas, but not seeing their vaginas. Like, you know what I mean?
And then they like display it on their desk.
Yeah, they display it. Yeah. And so of course my curious Gemini mind was like, oh, what would mine look like? And I started to try to like imagine what my casted vagina would look like and if I would be proud or not.
You should cast your vagina. Would you?
You wanted me to cast it and show you? God, Mandy. I could just drop my drawers and show you.
I don't need I'd rather see a casted version. I don't need to see a fleshy version.
Nope. Fleshy version. You don't need to see the meat curtains in person. Yeah, just flapping in the wind.
Oh, I knew it was gonna go there.
Of course it has to. It has to end that way.
Yeah.
Would I ever do that like in a circle? No.
You have a friend that casts stuff.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
I would never have her touch my vagina.
No, she wouldn't. Would she?
I don't think she would. I might, I think I would, like, because I've gotten Brazilians and stuff. Like I have no problem. Have you ever done that?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have no problem somebody being there or like, yeah. And so like when it's in that kind of, when they do it all the time, I wouldn't have a problem, So I guess you're right. If there was somebody that does that, I just wouldn't do it in a circle like the videos show, like have everybody see it. Type of thing. I don't think I would do that, but I guess I would do it in private where I'd be like, sure, like if I get Brazilians, they're in there anyways. So I'm like, what's
maybe
the big
it could
deal?
be an add-on service for your laser person.
And that's the thing. What do you do with it afterwards?
Well, you display it. You got to be proud of it.
No, it's like mounted above my bed.
I'm connected to my yoni. Here it is.
I going back into the dating scene and I'm like, welcome to my room. They're like,
Just so you-
what is that?
Just
That's
so you
my
know, this is what you're
vagina.
getting into. This is
This is what
like
you're
a sneak
getting
peek.
This is what you need to honor. A sneak peek. A sneak peek. There's no sneak peek. It's out in the open. If you don't like it, you better leave now.
You can put it on your dating.
It's my second picture. It's my second picture. Or they're like, oh my God, is that your vagina? And I'm like, no, it's my friend's. And then that's even weirder. What? Yeah, it's my friend. She gave it to me as a gift.
Housewarming gift.
Honor
Okay,
your yawn.
that's enough.
Okay,
That's
we're done.
enough.
Okay, we're still recording, aren't we?
Wrap
Okay.
it up.
I hope your dad doesn't listen to this one.
Me too. My aunt listens.
Oh shoot.
She'll enjoy this one. Hi, Auntie Karen. You'll enjoy this one.
You'll enjoy this one. Shoot. So sorry. Yeah. All right. So we hope that this episode, there's some healing aspects to it, some maybe reflective aspects to it, that you can walk away from, some giggles as well, because this is what we do. Like, let's mix in some of the serious with some of the fun, because playfulness is a part of our soul.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions or you want to talk further about the Yannis or get a group together, come on over to our Mighty Networks, Soulstar Lightworkers, because we can talk about it all there. Mandy, you got to put a post out next week about the Yanni.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Okay, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.